The red wine stain spread across the photograph, blurring the very corner of Eleanor's bright smile. Liam stared at the picture as the crystal glass shattered in his hand, sharp fragments slicing into his palm. But he didn't even feel the pain. Compared to the gut-wrenching betrayal in his heart, this physical damage was almost nothing. "He's different. He's just my friend." Eleanor's voice had sounded so confident on the phone, even with a hint of impatience. The photographs taken by the private investigator, Sam, silently proved her wrong. There was Eleanor and Aiden, fingers intertwined on the terrace of a discreet restaurant in New York City. She was throwing her head back, laughing, with a spark in her eyes Liam hadn't seen in 2 years. The next picture was even more suffocating, Aiden kissing the back of her hand, and not only did she not pull away, but she leaned slightly forward, an undeniable desire in her gaze. In the third photograph, they were kissing in front of the hotel elevator, Eleanor's fingers tangled in Aiden's dark hair, their embrace so intimate it was sickening. Liam picked up the phone, his voice surprisingly calm. "I understand." He hung up and pulled a velvet cloth from the drawer, carefully wrapping the family heirloom watch he had just repaired. It belonged to the founder of Vaughn Leatherworks, a symbol of glory and heritage for the century-old luxury brand. Engraved on the face was the family motto, "Legacy and loyalty uncompromised." Ironically, at this very moment, his wife was betraying both. Blood dripped from Liam's palm onto the dark oak desk like a silent oath. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Sam, I need more. Especially about their plans in New York. All the details." "It's already arranged, sir." The private investigator's voice came from the other end. "They plan to go to New York next Friday, supposedly for Fashion Week. But my informant tells me they've actually set up a private meeting with Khalid, the representative of the Middle Eastern Consortium." "Khalid? Khalid from the Al-Fayed group?" Liam's voice turned cold. "Are you sure?" 100%, sir. My informant works at the Park Hyatt Hotel and has confirmed that Eleanor and Aiden have booked a luxury suite and Khalid will arrive the same day. More importantly, I intercepted an encrypted email Aiden sent to the design team mentioning the Vaughn 2.0 plan and new investors. Liam closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The so-called Vaughn 2.0 was Aiden's self-proclaimed renewal plan, a proposal he had pitched to the board of directors several times and that Liam had firmly rejected. Eleanor had always been a strong supporter of Aiden, but Liam never imagined her ambition would go so far as to try to bring in outside capital to change the control of Vaughn. "Keep a close watch on all their movements, record every meeting. I also need the complete Vaughn 2.0 plan." "Understood, sir. I'll handle it personally." After hanging up, Liam walked to the panoramic window of his study, looking out at the view of historic Charleston. The evening light cast a golden glow on the city's iconic antebellum architecture, while the steeple of St. Michael's Church gleamed in the distance under the setting sun. The Vaughn family had put down roots in this city for over a century, growing from a small saddlery workshop into one of America's leading luxury brands. Liam was the third-generation leader of Vaughn, a reserved and determined man. At 37, he was well aware of the burden on his shoulders, to protect the soul of the century-old family brand while guiding it to survive in the modern business world. He wasn't conservative out of stubbornness, but because he deeply understood where the brand's value lay. In his view, Vaughn's vitality was in its consistency. In an era of fast consumption, the commitment to supreme craftsmanship and timeless style was its core essence. Eleanor was another story. The 34-year-old woman had married into the Vaughn family 8 years ago and was currently the brand's marketing director. At first, she too was fascinated by the family's glorious history, but over time, she grew increasingly anxious about the brand's stagnation. She had witnessed the rapid rise of numerous emerging luxury brands through social media, trendy collaborations, and accessible product lines, while Vaughn's market share declined year after year. Liam washed the blood from his hands, bandaged the wound simply, and then picked up an old leather-bound ledger from the table. It was Vaughn's first account book, recording the earliest orders since its founding in 1907. He gently caressed the yellowed pages that recorded each customer's name, the details of each product, the origin of each piece of leather. The founder's obsession with quality was clear through these meticulous records. "What would you do?" Liam asked softly, as if conversing with his ancestors. The answer seemed to rise from those yellowed pages. Vaughn wasn't just a brand, it was a promise of quality, dignity, and heritage. The price of betraying this promise would undoubtedly be high. Liam picked up his phone and booked a flight to the Hamptons. He needed the support of Beatrice, his retired aunt who still held real influence in the family, the central figure of Vaughn's second generation, and the final decision-maker of the family trust committee. Eleanor had chosen betrayal, and he, too, had made his own decision. 3 days later, Eleanor walked into the study and saw Liam packing his briefcase. Sunlight streamed through the half-drawn curtains, illuminating his freshly cut hair and flawless suit. Since that phone call, they had barely spoken, each acting out a pantomime, maintaining a superficial calm. "Where are you going?" she asked casually, her tone deliberately light, as if it were a simple, routine conversation. "To the Hamptons. There are family matters to attend to," Liam replied without looking up, placing a document in his briefcase. Eleanor frowned. "The Hamptons? You never mentioned this trip. Are you going to see Beatrice?" She tried to hide the tension in her voice. Beatrice, though retired for years, still had crucial influence in the Vaughn family. More importantly, Beatrice had never liked Eleanor, always looking at her with a scrutinizing gaze, as if she could see right through her soul. "Just like you never mentioned that your fashion week in New York with Aiden is actually a meeting with Khalid." Liam looked up, staring directly into Eleanor's eyes. At that moment, Eleanor felt a wave of cold fear shoot up her spine. In Liam's eyes, there was no anger, no pain, just an unsettling calm and determination. "I don't know what you're talking about," she forced herself to remain composed. "Of course," Liam's tone was terribly serene. "Just like I don't know anything about your Vaughn 2.0 plan." He pulled a document from his briefcase and threw it on the table. Eleanor recognized Aiden's design, their secret plan they had guarded so carefully. "Contacting outside investors behind the board's back, replacing our premium leathers with canvas and synthetic materials, swapping our classic designs for seasonal collections." Liam's voice remained calm, but each word cut like a knife. "Is this your renewal for Vaughn? Is this what you call salvation?" Eleanor was silent. She hadn't expected Liam to know so much. All this time, she had thought Liam was just a manager trapped by tradition who only knew how to cling to the rules left by his ancestors. But at this moment, she realized for the first time that she might have never truly understood her husband. "You can continue with your trip to New York, Eleanor." Liam closed his briefcase. "I have my own plans, too." With that, he walked past Eleanor without looking at her again. Eleanor stood motionless, feeling a fear she had never experienced before. Liam's calm was more terrifying than any anger, because it meant he was already fully prepared. "Liam!" she called after him, a pleading tone in her voice. "We can talk." Liam stopped at the door without turning back. "When we got married 8 years ago, you said Vaughn's tradition was one of the reasons you fell in love with me. Now it seems that was also a lie, wasn't it?" Eleanor was speechless. She wanted to defend herself, to say she had truly been fascinated by Vaughn's history, but over time she had seen the crisis the brand was facing. Yet all explanations seemed so weak. Liam left, leaving Eleanor alone in the center of the study, surrounded by the portraits of generations of Vaughns, their gazes seeming to silently condemn her betrayal. "Damn it!" Eleanor cursed under her breath, pulling out her phone to call Aiden. "We have a problem. Liam knows." "Knows what?" Aiden's voice sounded tense. "Everything. Khalid, Vaughn 2.0, everything." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. "That doesn't change anything," Aiden finally said, confidence returning to his voice. "Our plan is ready. Once Khalid invests, the board will be on our side. Liam will have no choice." Eleanor bit her lip, uncertain. "But Liam has gone to see Beatrice." This time the silence was longer. "That could be a problem," Aiden finally admitted. "We need to speed things up. Contact Khalid, ask him if he can move the meeting up." Eleanor nodded, though Aiden couldn't see her. "I'll take care of it. But we need to be careful. Liam is more prepared than we thought." After hanging up, Eleanor went to the window, watching Liam's car drive away. A disturbing premonition spread through her heart. Perhaps this time she had gambled too much. The Hampton sun cast a golden glow on the ancient oak trees, while the air was filled with the fresh scent of the sea. Liam drove his understated classic Corvette along winding country roads, flanked by rolling estates and manicured hedges. This land had witnessed the rise of the Vaughn family, a century-long journey from a small workshop to one of America's premier luxury brands. Beatrice's estate was hidden among the sprawling properties, a 1920s stone mansion that had been in the family for generations. When Liam arrived, Beatrice was in the garden pruning her beloved roses. Beatrice Vaughn, 67, was the central figure of the family's second generation and the final decision-maker of the family trust committee. 10 years ago, she had chosen to retire, retreating to this ancestral land, far from business disputes. But in the Vaughn family, everyone knew that the real power still rested with this seemingly detached woman. "Liam, my dear nephew," Beatrice said upon seeing him, setting down her pruning shears and removing her gloves. Her sharp eyes immediately noticed the bandage on his hand. "Have you hurt yourself?" Liam smiled faintly. "Just a small cut, Aunt Bee. I need your advice on some matters." Beatrice observed her nephew's expression keenly. "It must be something very serious for you to come to me personally and with an injury." She led him up a stone path to the terrace where afternoon iced tea was already set. Beatrice poured Liam a glass of his favorite citrus-infused tea. "It's Eleanor, isn't it?" Beatrice asked directly. Liam seemed surprised. "How did you know?" Beatrice took an elegant sip of her tea. "Even though I'm retired, my eyes and ears still work. Some of Eleanor's recent decisions have caught my attention, especially the hiring of that Aiden fellow. He's a talented designer, but he has no respect for tradition and even less understanding of Vaughn's soul." She looked directly into Liam's eyes. "Tell me what happened." Liam took 3 folders from his briefcase, placing them one by one on the oak table. The first file contains photographs from the private detective, proving that the relationship between Eleanor and Aiden goes far beyond the professional. He opened the first folder, revealing those painful pictures that documented Eleanor and Aiden's intimate moments in New York, Chicago, and even Los Angeles. Beatrice looked at the photos with a frown, but didn't seem particularly surprised. She shook her head slightly. "That foolish girl doesn't understand that in our circle, once your reputation is lost, you never get it back." The second is Aiden's Vaughn 2.0 plan. Liam opened the second folder, showing a completely new set of design concepts. "They plan to replace our premium leathers with canvas and synthetic materials, launch seasonal collections, and lower-priced secondary product lines, completely changing Vaughn's positioning." Beatrice put on her reading glasses and carefully examined the documents. As a former design director, she understood every sketch and every list of materials. Her expression grew increasingly grave. "These designs," she scoffed, tapping the drawings with her finger, "have no soul, no heritage, no Vaughn lineage. This isn't innovation, it's desecration. They don't understand at all where Vaughn's value lies." The third is the most crucial. Liam opened the last folder. "The real purpose of Eleanor and Aiden's trip to New York next week isn't Fashion Week, but a secret meeting with Khalid, a representative of a Middle Eastern consortium. They plan to bring in external capital and then force me to relinquish control at the board meeting." Beatrice took off her glasses and looked directly at Liam. Her expression became extremely serious. "This goes beyond marital infidelity, Liam. This is a direct threat to Vaughn, a threat to the family's century-old legacy." "I know," Liam nodded gravely. "That's why I need your support." Beatrice stood up and went to an old oak cabinet inside the house. She opened the doors and took out a leather box with the family crest. "You know what this is?" She placed the box in front of Liam. Liam nodded. "The first Vaughn key." Beatrice opened the box where an old brass key with the family crest rested. This was the symbol of the Vaughn family, representing the stewardship of the brand's soul and family honor. "When your father gave you this key, what did he tell you?" Beatrice asked. "He told me Vaughn isn't a brand, it's a promise of quality, dignity, and heritage," Liam recalled, his voice filled with respect. Beatrice nodded with satisfaction. "Then, now is the time to fulfill that promise." She placed the key back in the box and handed it to Liam. "Take it with you, to remind you of the responsibility you carry. As for Eleanor and Aiden's plan, we need to stop them in person." "What do you mean?" "We're going to New York." Beatrice's eyes shone with determination. "Let's let this Khalid see what the real power of Vaughn looks like. In the meantime, I'll convene the family trust committee to make sure they're on our side." Liam felt a great sense of relief. He knew that with Beatrice's support, no matter how elaborate Eleanor and Aidan's plan was, it would fall apart. In old American family businesses, blood and tradition were often more important than business strategies. "Thank you, Aunt Bee," Liam said softly, his voice full of sincere gratitude. Beatrice patted his hand. "Don't thank me. Vaughn is our shared responsibility. As for Eleanor," she sighed, "I'm sorry she made this choice, but betrayal is unforgivable, Liam, whether to the family or to the marriage." Liam nodded, his gaze firm. He was already prepared for the worst and also ready to face a new beginning, no matter the price. "We need to come up with a plan," Beatrice said, a glint of wisdom in her eyes. "Not just to stop their conspiracy, but also to prepare for Vaughn's future. The betrayal of Eleanor and Aidan might be an opportunity to rethink the brand's direction." Liam looked at his aunt with curiosity. "Do you have any ideas?" Beatrice smiled, a smile that reflected decades of business wisdom. "I have an idea, but first, let's solve the immediate crisis." Meanwhile, in a luxury restaurant in New York, Eleanor and Aidan were discussing the details of their upcoming meeting with Khalid. "Is all the material ready?" Eleanor asked, sipping champagne. Aidan nodded, a confident gleam in his eyes. "Perfect. It took me a whole month to prepare this presentation. Khalid will love Vaughn 2.0. He's especially interested in the modern transformation of traditional luxury brands. They already have several success stories in their investment portfolio." Eleanor looked out the window at the neon lights of the fashion district with mixed feelings. "Liam already suspects," she said softly. "Today he mentioned Khalid and Vaughn 2.0. He knows more than we thought." Aidan's smile froze. "What? How could he know? We've always been careful." "I don't know," Eleanor shook her head. "But he went to see Beatrice." Aidan's expression changed. "That's a problem. Beatrice's influence in the family shouldn't be underestimated." "I know," Eleanor sighed. "She's never liked me. She always looks at me with that gaze, as if I'm an outsider, as if I'll never truly belong to Vaughn." Aidan took Eleanor's hand. "But that's exactly what we need to change, Eleanor. Vaughn shouldn't be a closed family fortress, but a modern global brand. Your vision is 10 years ahead of theirs." Eleanor smiled gratefully, but the unease inside her didn't disappear. She remembered 8 years ago when she had just joined the Vaughn family. Back then, Liam was full of passion, and his love for the family brand was contagious. They used to stay up late in the workshop, discussing the texture of the leather, the details of the stitching, and how to integrate modern elements while maintaining tradition. At that time, she also believed in Vaughn's values: supreme craftsmanship, timeless design, uncompromised quality. But over time, changes in the market led her to question whether these values were still suitable for the modern business world. When Aidan appeared with his concept of renewal, she was convinced, not just by his creativity, but also by the unrestrained vitality that had already disappeared from Liam. "What are you thinking about?" Aidan's voice interrupted her memories. Eleanor shook her head. "Nothing. Just thinking about how to respond to a possible counterattack from Liam and Beatrice." Aidan smiled confidently. "Don't worry. Once we have Khalid's investment, the board will be on our side. The business world is based on results, not feelings. When they see how much growth and profit our plan can bring to Vaughn, no one will care about Liam's traditional sentimentality." Eleanor nodded, but the doubts in her heart were not completely dispelled. She knew that old family businesses were fundamentally different from the business world Aidan spoke of. Here, blood, tradition, and honor were sometimes more important than profits. "We should go back to the hotel," Aidan said, getting up and paying the bill. "Tomorrow we still have to confirm the final details with the design team." Eleanor followed Aidan out of the restaurant. The night breeze brushed against her cheeks, bringing a slight, barely perceptible chill. She suddenly had a premonition, as if a storm was about to break. A week later, in the top suite of the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York, Eleanor and Aidan were making the final preparations for their meeting with Khalid. Eleanor wore a dark blue silk dress from Vaughn's latest collection, paired with the family's iconic leather accessories. She looked elegant and confident, but inside she was more nervous than ever. Today's meeting would determine her future, not just her career, but also her marriage and her position at Vaughn. "Relax," Aiden came up to her, gently massaging her shoulders. "You're too tense." Eleanor gave him a weak smile. "I'm just thinking about Liam. He's been unusually quiet these days. It's not like him." Aiden laughed softly. "Maybe he's already accepted reality, or maybe he's busy with that family matter you mentioned. In any case, thinking about it now won't help. Focus on today, Eleanor. After today, everything will be different." There was an undeniable certainty in his words that comforted Eleanor. Maybe Aiden was right. Maybe Liam wouldn't react too strongly. After all of this was for the future of Vaughn, wasn't it? The doorbell rang, interrupting their thoughts. Aiden adjusted his tie. "I'll get it." At the door was a well-dressed, middle-aged man with 2 assistants behind him. "Ms. Eleanor, Mr. Aiden, I'm Khalid. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Eleanor stepped forward to shake his hand. "Welcome, Mr. Khalid. Thank you for taking the time to see us." Khalid looked around the meeting room, nodding slightly. "This is a private place, very suitable for our discussion." After the 3 of them sat down, Eleanor began her carefully prepared presentation. She first introduced the history of Vaughn, from its founding in 1907 to the present, how it had grown from a saddlery maker to a top leather goods brand in America. Then, she showed the market data from the last 5 years, pointing out the challenges the brand was facing. The traditional luxury market is shrinking, while the accessible and younger luxury markets are growing rapidly, Eleanor said, pointing to the charts on the slide. Vaughn needs to adapt to this change, or it will be left behind by the times. Aiden continued, presenting the core plan of Vaughn 2.0, maintaining the high-end leather goods line while launching a canvas line and designs more in line with the aesthetic of young people, developing online sales channels, and collaborating with contemporary artists and trendy brands. "We predict that these transformations will increase sales by 40% and profit margins by 15% in 3 years, Aiden concluded confidently. Khalid listened attentively and nodded. "A very convincing plan. But I have a few questions. First, what is Mr. Liam Vaughn's attitude towards this?" Eleanor and Aiden exchanged a look. "Liam is more focused on the brand's traditional values," Eleanor said, choosing her words carefully. "He's an excellent guardian, but sometimes too conservative. We believe that with the support of the board and a positive market response, he will agree to this strategy." Khalid nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. And what about Mrs. Beatrice Vaughn?" "As I understand it, she still has influence in the family." Eleanor remained composed. "Beatrice retired many years ago and rarely intervenes in the company's operations. Besides, she doesn't fully understand the dynamics of the contemporary market." Khalid was about to ask another question when there was a knock at the meeting room door. "That's strange. I haven't scheduled anyone else," Eleanor frowned, motioning to Aiden. Aiden went to the door, opened it, and froze. Liam Vaughn stood in the doorway with Beatrice at his side, dressed in a classic dark Vaughn suit, wearing the family's signature leather necklace, exuding an undeniable authority. Eleanor felt dizzy, almost unable to stand. Her gaze shifted from Liam's serene face to Beatrice's stern look, and then to Khalid's thoughtful expression. "Excuse the interruption." Liam's voice was surprisingly calm. "But I believe the future of Vaughn should be decided by the entire family, not just a few individuals." Beatrice stepped forward, looking directly at Khalid. "I am Beatrice Vaughn, chairwoman of the Family Trust Committee. Unfortunately, Eleanor and Aiden have not been authorized by the board of directors to negotiate with any investors. If you are interested in Vaughn, we can arrange a formal meeting where Liam and the entire board will host you." Khalid immediately stood up, bowing deeply to Beatrice. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Vaughn. I have always deeply admired Vaughn's history and craftsmanship." He then turned to Eleanor and Aiden, his tone cold. "It seems today's meeting must end earlier than planned. Thank you for your presentation, but our fund prefers to negotiate formally with the complete management team and family representatives." With that, he gave a courteous nod to Liam and Beatrice, then left with his assistants. The room fell into a deathly silence. Eleanor felt her heart beating so loudly it was suffocating. She looked at Aiden, who was pale, his lips pressed tightly together, evidently experiencing the same terror. So this is what you call different, Eleanor. Liam broke the silence, no anger in his voice, only deep disappointment. You chose betrayal, betraying me, the family, everything Vaughn stands for. Eleanor finally understood what different really meant. Her ally was a talented but rootless outsider, while Liam's allies were the cornerstone of power and the spiritual symbol of the Vaughn family. She had chosen to bring in external capital to subvert the internal order, while Liam had chosen to consolidate internal legitimacy to eliminate the heresy. She thought money and modern business models were power, but Liam showed her that in this old family, blood, tradition, and undeniable authority were the true power. An emergency board meeting will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Charleston headquarters. Beatrice's voice was stern and authoritative. You two would do well to attend. With that, Liam and Beatrice left, leaving Eleanor and Aidan staring at each other, stunned and terrified. Now what? Aidan finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window, looking out at the busy New York streets, lost in thought. She had believed she knew Liam, a traditional, conservative, and even somewhat weak man, someone who would eventually yield to her persistence. But now she realized she had never really known her husband. Behind that quiet exterior hid an opponent far more formidable than she had imagined. I don't know, Eleanor finally said, an unprecedented defeat in her voice. I really don't know. Aidan came up to her, trying to take her hand, but Eleanor gently pulled it away. This was your idea, Aidan. Her voice suddenly turned cold. Bringing in external capital, bypassing Liam, controlling the board. Now it's all over. Aidan's expression changed. Don't do that, Eleanor. It was a joint decision. Don't forget, you were the one who first contacted me, saying Vaughn needed a change, new blood. Eleanor smiled bitterly. Yes, but I never thought of betraying Liam and the family like this. What are you saying? Aidan's voice was filled with disbelief. Was everything between us also just for the company? Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't know how to answer. At first, she had truly been drawn to Aidan's talent and vitality, moved by his passion for design. Between Liam's conservatism and Aidan's innovation, she had chosen the latter. But now, facing the impending storm, she wasn't sure if that had been the right choice. We need to prepare for tomorrow's board meeting, Eleanor finally said, forcing herself back to reality. We need to have an explanation. Aidan nodded, but his gaze had changed. There was pain, anger, and a cold calculation that Eleanor had never seen before. She suddenly realized that perhaps she didn't know Aidan, just as she didn't know Liam. The night grew deep, and Eleanor, lying in bed, couldn't sleep. Her world had collapsed in a day, and tomorrow's board meeting would determine her fate. Worse, she was beginning to question everything she had done. What for? To prove she understood the market better than Liam? To satisfy her ambition? Or really for the future of Vaughn? These questions haunted her like ghosts until the first ray of dawn pierced through the curtains, heralding the arrival of Judgment Day. The morning light of Charleston filtered through the century-old stained-glass windows of the old mansion, bathing the walnut table that had served 4 generations of Vaughns in a sacred golden light. On the walls hung portraits of the family leaders throughout history, their gazes seemingly piercing through time, watching this meeting that would determine the family's destiny. Liam sat in the chairman's position, his face as calm as water, but with an undeniable determination in his eyes. Beatrice sat to his right, upright, majestic as a mountain. The other 5 directors, 2 family members and 3 professional managers, had serious expressions, documents neatly placed before them. The meeting room door opened again, and Eleanor and Aidan walked in. Eleanor wore a sober suit, trying to appear calm, but her slightly red eyes revealed she hadn't slept all night. Aidan was impeccably dressed, but the beads of sweat on his forehead and his restless gaze gave him away. Please, have a seat. Liam gestured for them to sit at the opposite end of the meeting table. When everyone was seated, Liam looked around and began. I have convened this emergency meeting to discuss a serious matter. Eleanor and Aidan have, on their own, contacted external investors, attempting to bring in outside capital to change the company's strategic direction, an action not authorized by the board of directors, which violates Article 17 of the company bylaws regarding procedures for major decisions. He took several documents from his briefcase and distributed them to each director. The first is the Vaughn 2.0 plan, designed by Eleanor and Aidan, which includes the introduction of canvas materials, seasonal designs, and secondary product lines. The second is a record of their meeting with Khalid, representative of the Middle Eastern Consortium, including photographs taken by Sam and summaries of recordings. The third is an investigation report on the personal relationship between Eleanor and Aidan, which proves the existence of a private relationship beyond the professional. The directors reviewed the documents with increasingly serious expressions. Beatrice paid special attention to the designs in the second document, her brow furrowed. "These are all proofs of conspiracy," Liam concluded serenely. "As CEO and family representative, I believe these actions severely violate the company's interests and family values. I propose that the board vote on whether to immediately dismiss Eleanor as marketing director and terminate Aidan's design consulting contract." Eleanor stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Everything I've done has been for the future of Vaughn." Her voice trembled with emotion. "Look at our financial reports, how much sales have fallen in the last 5 years, how much the high-end leather market has shrunk. We are being eliminated by the market, and you are still immersed in past glories, unwilling to wake up." "Eleanor," Beatrice spoke, her voice quiet but undeniable, "I have carefully studied your plan. As a former design director for 30 years, I must say, this is not innovation, but a betrayal of Vaughn's soul." She picked up a design page from the document. "This canvas material is everywhere on the market. This zipper detail can be done by any fast fashion brand. This so-called design for young people completely loses Vaughn's identity." Her voice grew sterner. "You were hired as marketing director not to change Vaughn's soul, but to expand the market while maintaining the brand's core values." "Beatrice, you don't understand the modern market," Eleanor retorted, desperation in her voice. "You've been retired for years. You don't know how fast the outside world is changing." "Enough, Eleanor," Liam interrupted her. "This isn't just about differences in market strategy. You could have sought the board's support. You could have requested a formal strategic review. You could have even brought in external consultants to evaluate. But you chose the least honest path, conspiring behind the board's back, developing a personal relationship with another man behind your husband's back." Aidan finally spoke up. "I admit our method may not have been the most appropriate, but please look at my design proposal. Vaughn needs this kind of change to survive in the contemporary market. Our goal was to save this brand, not destroy it." An elderly director shook his head. "Young man, Vaughn has been around for over 100 years. It has survived 2 world wars, multiple economic crises, and countless fashion trends. We haven't done it by following trends, but by staying true to our style and quality. When other brands constantly compromise for short-term profits, our persistence becomes a rare advantage." Another director, a shrewd financial expert, added, "Furthermore, your market analysis has clear flaws." He opened the report, pointing to a graph. "Here, you ignore the changes in the behavior of high-end consumers after the pandemic. The data shows that the high-end luxury market is recovering. Consumers value quality and durability more than seasonal changes." Eleanor tried to rebut, but every argument was refuted one by the directors. Finally, the board voted 7-0 in favor of dismissing Eleanor and Aidan. Furthermore, the board approved a motion to take legal action against Aidan, accusing him of violating strict confidentiality and non-compete agreements. When the meeting ended and the other directors left, only Liam, Beatrice, Eleanor, and Aidan remained in the room. Eleanor's defenses completely crumbled. Her face was pale, her hands trembled, and tears of anger and resentment welled up in her eyes. "You can't do this to me." Her voice shifted from resentment to anger. "Liam, I have dedicated 8 years of my youth to this family. I gave up my career in New York to marry you, to join Vaughn. By what right do you subject me to this archaic family tribunal?" She turned to Beatrice. "Weren't you an innovator too? 30 years ago it was you who took Vaughn from making harnesses to a full line of leather goods. Why is my change a betrayal?" Beatrice looked at her calmly. "Because my innovation was based on respect for tradition, while your change seeks to abandon it, and most importantly, I never acted behind the family's back. Eleanor turned to Liam, her voice trembling. This is all because of my relationship with Aiden, isn't it? You're jealous, so you want to destroy everything of mine. Liam looked at his hysterical wife, and the last shred of emotion vanished. Once he had loved this intelligent and energetic woman. Now he only saw a stranger blinded by ambition, a traitor. No, Eleanor, it's not because of your relationship with Aiden. Liam's voice was deep and firm. It's because you betrayed Vaughn's trust. You betrayed our marriage. You betrayed yourself. The board's decision is based on your professional conduct, not your personal relationships. As for our marriage, I believe you have already made your decision. What do you mean? Eleanor was suddenly alert. I've already contacted a lawyer to file for divorce. Liam looked directly into Eleanor's eyes. The papers will be in your hands this week. Beatrice stood up. I think you need to resolve these matters in private. Mr. Aiden, come with me. We have some details to discuss about the termination of your contract. When Beatrice and Aiden left, the room fell silent. Eleanor slumped into her chair, tears falling silently. Are you really going to end our marriage like this, so simply? Simply? Liam smiled bitterly. Eleanor, in the last 2 years, every time I've tried to save our marriage, where have you been? In New York, discussing your vision with Aiden, at the board meeting, describing me as a stubborn conservative, or in our bedroom, responding coldly to every one of my concerns. He walked to the window, looking out at the old red roofs of Charleston and the historic church steeples. I loved you once, Eleanor, he said softly. I loved your intelligence, your energy, your passion for Vaughn. But you've changed. Or rather, you've finally shown your true self, someone who can sacrifice everything for ambition, including our marriage, including the soul of Vaughn. Eleanor lifted her head, a final flash of pride in her eyes. Do you think this will defeat me? I can go to any fashion group. They'll be fighting to have me. Liam shook his head. Maybe. But in the American luxury industry, family and networks are much more important than you imagine. In any case, good luck, Eleanor. With that, he turned towards the door. Liam, Eleanor called him, a pleading tone in her voice, is there really no chance of reconciliation? Liam stopped at the door without turning back. You're asking the wrong person, Eleanor. You should be asking yourself that question. When you were conspiring with Aiden to betray Vaughn, when you were spending time with him in New York hotels, did you consider whether our marriage had a chance of reconciliation? Eleanor was silent. She knew Liam was right. Deep down, ambition, dissatisfaction, and the attraction to Aiden had finally overcome her valuation of her marriage. You'll receive a respectable sum after the divorce, Liam finally said. Enough to start a new life. But you will lose the Vaughn name and all your positions in the company. This is non-negotiable. With that, he walked out of the meeting room without looking back, leaving Eleanor alone to face a shattered future. The following months were like a storm. The divorce process went smoothly, given that both parties agreed. According to the prenuptial agreement and the careful arrangements of the family lawyers, Eleanor received a considerable sum of money but lost all rights to the Vaughn brand. What surprised Eleanor most was that when the news spread, the entire high society of Charleston and even New York practically excluded her overnight. She no longer received invitations to dinners she was once eagerly invited to. Her friends on social media distanced themselves, and even the clerks at the boutiques she frequented showed a noticeably cold attitude towards her. In this world, where family honor and loyalty are so highly valued, betrayal is the most unforgivable sin. Aiden's situation was even more difficult. Vaughn not only immediately terminated his contract, but also sued him for violating strict confidentiality and non-compete clauses. The court ordered him to pay a huge sum for breach of contract and banned him from working in the American luxury industry for 3 years. More seriously, his attempt to subvert a century-old house earned him a bad reputation throughout the industry. No top-tier brand dared to hire him, and his design talent had nowhere to be expressed. This is so unfair, Aiden said furiously to Eleanor during a video call. They don't understand innovation. Vaughn will regret this sooner or later. Eleanor tiredly looked at Aiden's distorted face on the screen. She was no longer moved by his passion, but saw a childish stubbornness. Perhaps Liam was right. Aiden had talent but lacked respect and understanding for tradition. "We both need to move on, Aiden," Eleanor said calmly. "What's done is done." Aiden laughed coldly. "Move on? You easily got a sum of money while I've been blacklisted from the entire industry. Is this what you call moving on?" "I didn't just lose money, Aiden." Eleanor's voice suddenly became sharp. "I lost my position, my reputation, even my name. At least you can start over in another industry." Aiden's gaze turned cold. "Yes, all because of you. If you hadn't encouraged me to challenge Vaughn's tradition, if you hadn't promised me that Liam would accept our plan, I could be a creative director at some top-tier brand in New York by now." Eleanor looked at the screen in disbelief. "You're blaming me? You were the one who proposed this plan, you who insisted on meeting with Khalid." "But you agreed," Aiden said coldly. "No, you used my talent and aspirations to get more power for yourself. Now that everything has failed, you want to wash your hands of it." Eleanor was speechless. She hung up the phone, feeling an unprecedented weariness. She finally understood that Aiden had never valued her, but the resources and platform of Vaughn that he could obtain through her. Now that everything was lost, he was showing his true colors. Meanwhile, Liam did not fall into a depression as Eleanor had expected. After a brief period of adjustment, he showed astonishing resilience and determination. First, he dissolved Aiden's design team and personally took over the design department. He could often be seen in the workshop late at night, immersed in old design archives, reviewing every piece, every sketch, every stitch record from Vaughn's 100-year history. "You don't have to work so hard, Liam," Beatrice told him during a late-night visit. "We can hire a new design director." Liam shook his head, determination shining in his eyes. "No, Aunt B. I need to do this myself. I need to feel the soul of Vaughn again, to understand its language, and only then can I decide how to move forward." Beatrice looked at her nephew's tired but determined face, feeling both comforted and pained. She knew that Eleanor's betrayal had affected Liam much more than he showed, but equally, this crisis had also awakened an inner strength and determination in him. After 3 months of research and design, Liam convened the design team and presented his concept for a new collection. "We'll call it the Heritage Collection," Liam explained to the designers, showing sketches he had drawn himself. "This collection will return to Vaughn's original source of inspiration, the art and craftsmanship of the American South. But it's not a simple recreation, but a reinterpretation of those timeless elements with modern technology and aesthetics." The designers were infected by Liam's enthusiasm and vision, immersing themselves in unprecedented creativity. They dug into old archives, studied traditional techniques while incorporating modern elements, creating a series of designs that were both classic and fresh. 6 months later, the Heritage Collection was officially presented at New York Fashion Week. Unlike the noise and ostentation of other brands, Vaughn's presentation was held in an old museum, sober and dignified. Vrai Prater. Vaughn is not just a luxury brand, but a cultural heritage, Liam explained during the presentation. The Heritage Collection doesn't chase trends, but reinterprets eternal values. In this era of rapid change, we believe that true innovation is not about abandoning tradition, but about giving it new life. Surprisingly, the collection caused a sensation as soon as it was launched, hailed by fashion critics as an elegant response to a frantic era. Especially after the post-pandemic social changes, consumers' appreciation for slow luxury, sustainability, and heritage values increased significantly, turning Vaughn's persistence into a rare advantage. Vogue wants to interview you on the theme, How Tradition Finds New Life in the Digital Age, his assistant informed him after a meeting. Liam smiled and nodded. Schedule it for next week, but emphasize that this is not my merit alone, but the fruit of the collective wisdom of the entire Vaughn team. In his personal life, Liam also made changes. He moved out of the mansion he shared with Eleanor and returned to the family's ancestral residence in the historic district of Charleston. This 19th-century townhouse, steeped in the history of the Vaughn family, provided him with a comfort of returning to his roots. He took up horse riding again, which he had long abandoned, and visited Beatrice in the Hamptons every week. Surprisingly, these changes completely transformed him from a somewhat tired middle-aged manager to a family leader full of vitality and charisma. "You look much better, Liam," Beatrice commented during a family gathering. Liam smiled and nodded. "Because I've finally shed burdens that didn't belong to me." He didn't explain in detail, but Beatrice understood what he meant. Eleanor's betrayal was painful, but it also allowed Liam to free himself from a marriage that existed only in name and to find himself again. Meanwhile, Eleanor's life had hit a low point. Although she found a job at a luxury brand in New York thanks to her credentials, it was far from as important as she had hoped. She was no longer a decision-maker, but just one among many middle managers. More painfully, she had lost her social circle and influence. Those friends who used to surround her had long since disappeared. "Eleanor, about that market report, we need to redo it," her new boss, a woman 10 years younger than her, said coldly. "Your analysis is too conservative. We need more aggressive strategies." Eleanor gritted her teeth and nodded. Ironically, while at Vaughn she was the driver of radical change, now in this fast fashion brand, she had become the conservative. She found herself starting to miss the quality and depth of Vaughn, those values she once considered outdated. One night, Eleanor sat alone on the balcony of her New York apartment, looking at the distant lights, with mixed feelings. She picked up her phone, checking the latest updates from Vaughn on social media. The Heritage collection had been a success, stocks were hitting new highs, and the waiting list was longer than ever. And all of this had been achieved without her. Harder to accept was that Liam looked better than ever. In media reports, he appeared radiant, full of confidence, leading Vaughn to new heights. There was no trace of the decline and loss she had expected. "Maybe he never needed me," Eleanor murmured bitterly. "Maybe I was the one who always needed him." This idea shook her. She had always thought she was saving Vaughn, saving Liam from being discarded by the Times. But reality proved that Liam was much stronger and wiser than she had imagined. Aidan's situation was worse. The American ban prevented him from working in the luxury industry, and his design talent was forced into the fast fashion sector. But even there, his reputation made it difficult to find a decent job. Finally, he could only accept a low-level designer position at a fast fashion brand in Seattle, copying popular designs from other brands. "I hate Vaughn, I hate Liam, and I hate you, Eleanor," he said in their last conversation, bitterness in his voice. "If it weren't for you, I could be a creative director at some top-tier brand in New York by now." Eleanor didn't contradict him. She knew Aidan's accusations were partially true. She had encouraged him to challenge Vaughn's tradition, had given him the illusion that he could change everything. But she also knew that Aidan's failure ultimately came from his own arrogance and contempt for tradition. The call ended in silence. Eleanor knew that her relationship with Aidan, both professional and personal, was definitively over. One spring evening, a year after the divorce, Liam attended a charity gala for the preservation of historic buildings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. As a sponsor, after his speech, he was introduced to Paige, a museum curator from Washington, D.C. Paige was an elegant and intellectual woman with a deep knowledge of American art. When she talked about the influence of Southern art on Vaughn's early designs, Liam was attracted by her ideas and enthusiasm. "You know, I've always thought that Vaughn isn't just a luxury brand, but a living cultural heritage," Paige told Liam in the gallery corridor after dinner. "That commitment to detail, the respect for craftsmanship, the eternal pursuit of beauty. It's so rare in today's business world." Liam smiled and nodded. "That's precisely the philosophy we've always maintained. In this era of fast consumption, maintaining this cultural heritage isn't easy. But it's that persistence that makes Vaughn different." Paige's eyes shone with sincerity under the gallery lights. "I admire that." Their conversation continued late into the night, from art to philosophy, from history to the future. Liam found that talking to Paige brought him a sense of lightness and pleasure he hadn't experienced in a long time. She understood his commitment to tradition, appreciated his pursuit of beauty, and did not lack the independence and perspective of a modern woman. In the following months, they began to see each other regularly, sometimes in museums, sometimes in small restaurants, occasionally at Liam's house in historic Charleston. Their relationship developed in a quiet, mature, and mutually respectful atmosphere, in stark contrast to his previous marriage full of anxiety and conflict. "You know what I admire most about you?" Paige asked Liam during a lunch at his Charleston home. Liam shook his head, looking at her with curiosity. "Your steadfastness," Paige said seriously. "In this age when everyone is chasing change, you know what is truly important and you defend it. That's rare and valuable." Liam felt a wave of warmth. Eleanor had never truly understood his perseverance. She only saw his apparent conservatism without seeing the convictions and values behind it. And Paige, a stranger, could see this so clearly. "Thank you for understanding," Liam said softly, taking Paige's hand. 2 years later, on a summer afternoon, Liam and Paige were enjoying coffee at a cafe in Charleston. After 2 years of dating, their bond was stable and deep, and Paige had become an indispensable partner in Liam's life. "The new issue of Vogue is out," Paige passed a magazine to Liam. "There's an article dedicated to the revival of Vaughn. It says you've created the most impressive transformation in the luxury industry." Liam took the magazine, smiling, and turned to the corresponding page. The article, titled "The Perfect Balance of Tradition and Innovation, The Rebirth of Vaughn," devoted 6 full pages to explaining how Vaughn had managed to innovate and grow without abandoning its core values. "It seems my stagnation has some value after all," Liam joked. Paige patted his hand. "You've never been stagnant. You have principles. The world needs more people like you, Liam." At that moment, Liam's gaze fell on a familiar figure across the cafe. Eleanor. She had changed a lot. She was no longer the radiant marketing director of Vaughn, but a middle-aged woman who looked tired and ordinary. She sat alone in a corner, drinking coffee in silence, occasionally looking at the book in her hands. Eleanor also saw Liam and Paige. She froze, not knowing what to do. She had heard that Liam had a new partner, but seeing them happy in person caused a pang of pain. Liam hesitated for a moment, then nodded toward Eleanor as a greeting. Eleanor responded with a forced smile, quickly lowering her head, pretending to focus on her book. "Is that Eleanor?" Paige asked softly. She knew about Liam's ex-wife, but had never seen her. "Yes," Liam replied briefly, without adding more. Paige nodded understandingly, not pushing. She knew that chapter was in the past for Liam, though the scars remained. Liam looked towards Eleanor again, and saw that she was already hastily paying the bill, preparing to leave. Watching his ex-wife's hurried figure, Liam felt no anger, no pain, not even pity. Only a quiet confirmation. He had made the right decision, both for Vaughn and for his own life. Eleanor left the cafe without looking back. Seeing Liam happy with his new partner brought up mixed feelings. She had decided to leave the country and accept a position in New York. While it wasn't her dream job, at least it would take her away from these painful memories. She remembered her ambitions and dreams to be the person who would change Vaughn's destiny, leading the century-old brand into a new era. But reality had taught her a harsh lesson. In this world where tradition and blood are so valued, outsiders will never truly have power, and traitors will never be forgiven. The most ironic part was that Liam, the husband she considered lacking in vision, had not only successfully revitalized Vaughn, but had also found new happiness, while she, the self-proclaimed innovator, had become a marginal figure in the industry, leaving alone the city she thought she would conquer. As for Aiden, she had recently heard that he had given up his design dreams and opened a small coffee shop in Seattle, publicly claiming it was his return to authenticity. But those in the know knew it was nothing more than a dignified excuse for failure. His talent and ambition were finally shattered by reality, reduced to the ordinary life he once despised. Vaughn still stood tall in the heart of Charleston, the century-old mansion that, as always, silently watched the passage of time. Under Liam's leadership, the brand had found the perfect balance between tradition and innovation. Sales were reaching historic highs, and the waiting list had more customers than ever. Sometimes Liam remembered Eleanor's words, "He's different. He's just my friend." And his quiet response, "I understand." At that moment, he still didn't know how his life would completely change, but it was precisely that seemingly calm response that marked the beginning of his personal recovery and the defense of his family's honor. With Paige, Liam discovered an unprecedented serenity and satisfaction. She was not a replacement for Eleanor, but a new beginning, a relationship based on mutual understanding, respect, and shared values. "Ready to visit that new exhibition?" Paige asked, interrupting Liam's memories. Liam smiled and nodded, taking her hand. "Of course, let's go." As they walked out of the cafe hand in hand, bathed in the golden Charleston light, Liam knew that no matter what the future held, he had found his true path, one that didn't require betrayal or compromise to achieve growth and happiness. And Eleanor, standing on a distant corner, watched their departing figures one last time, looking one last time at this city that had given her everything and then taken it all away. She turned and melted into the bustling Charleston crowd, becoming just another hurried passerby, leaving behind only regret and an endless reflection on what could have been. Thank you for listening to this emotional story. We'd love to know, from what part of the world are you watching this video? What time is it there? Let us know in the comments. Whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good night, we wish you a wonderful day. If this story has moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We hope to meet you in another story.